So here I am again, and today I want to talk about an interesting subject. So maybe you know this, maybe you don't know this, but I worked in Asia for probably about 10 years, on and off, different countries, Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar mostly. And today I want to talk about Thailand. A lot of people, especially, those in their early 20s, those who want to leave the UK, leave Europe for a while, they go to Thailand looking for jobs. And the main job is teaching. And pretty much, you can get a job anywhere in Thailand, just about, in a government school, in a private school, even a language center. So I just want to cover a few things, and if you watch through this video, get through to the end, you may figure out whether it's for you or maybe it's not. And I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm not selling a dream. I just want to share my experiences as I taught in Thailand for nearly 4 years. So I thought I'd just share the experience, because at the moment I've seen a lot of YouTubers, especially these sort of they're like motivational speakers. They come on, they're like, yeah, England's finished. Guys, reclaim your freedom, whatever. And yeah, you can get a job teaching in Southeast Asia, or you can move to Southeast Asia. That's the answer to all your problems. The West is finished. All that. So I just want to shed light on it and give more of a more clear picture of the situation. So anyway, let's start with the pros. We'll go with the good stuff first. So should you teach in Thailand? I wouldn't say no. I would say there are a lot of pros to it. I mean, one, you got a really nice laid back pace of life. I mean, the weather's good. Every day the weather's good. Even when it's raining, it's still nice because it's warm, You got that. Two, the cost of living is way cheaper than the UK still. It really is. And three, people are friendly. They're actually very friendly. Even your students at that, and maybe your co-workers. So there are quite a few pros of teaching in Thailand. You can be there, laid back pace of life. You get paid for actually being there. And when you're not working, you can go travel, see the islands, see other parts of Thailand, beaches. It's wonderful. And you can even visit neighboring countries as well if you got enough time. Like Malaysia is not far, Cambodia, Vietnam, even Singapore, So there is that. And not only that, most schools, if you're in a government school like I was most of the time, you only do realistically about 20 hours a week of actual teaching. The rest of the time you sat in the office, and yeah, you do have to make lesson plans, but generally you spend most of your time watching YouTube or just chatting with your colleagues or going out for really long lunches. I mean, I had cases where on one day I'd only have 2 lessons in the whole day. I would have one in the morning, then I'd have almost a gap of, say, 3-4 hours of nothing. I would go home and cook myself lunch from scratch, eat my lunch, watch a movie, and then go back for my next lesson. You're not technically meant to do that, but I did, because it was a really small town. The school was really laid back. They didn't care. As long as you were there, you did your job. That was cool. So yeah, you've also, to come back to my point, you've got less of a workload in Thailand. It's not like in England where, you do 8 hours a day. It's 8 hours of solid work with a half an hour lunch break if you're lucky. In Thailand, your 8 hours, you do have to sign in generally at 8 in the morning and you sign out at 4. But in those 8 hours, you may only do 2 to 3 lessons in that whole day. Rest of it, you'll just be chilling in the office. So there is that as well. It's a lot more laid back. Also, as I mentioned, the weather's great. Depending on where in Thailand you are. If you're in the far north, like Chiang Mai, it's a bit cooler up there. It can even get a bit cold in the winter. If you're in the middle part, like Bangkok, sort of Chonburi area, even like, say Nakhon Sawan, like the central part of Thailand, it's hot, but it's more of a kind of dryish kind of heat, if that makes sense. Can be a bit humid at times, but it does get a bit intense in the summer. Or if you decide to move down to the southern part of Thailand, say like, I don't know, like near Krabi, Hat Yai, Nakhon Si Thammarat, those areas, you've got more of a temperate weather. Like it's sort of about the same every day of the year because you're getting close to the equator. It's roughly around like 28 degrees, 30 degrees, while in the center and like sort of near Bangkok, you were looking more close to the 40s on some days. So, you've got different weather depending on where in Thailand you are. And also, yeah, cost of living. So, one pro, rent would generally only take about a quarter of your salary at the most. Like if you're paying more than a quarter of your salary in rent, then maybe, I don't know, you're pushing the boat out a bit. I used to keep to a quarter. For example, I used to earn 35,000 baht, and on average, my rent was no more than 7,000, if that. Actually, I've had places for less than five before, but like that. And also, if you factor in renting a moped, and believe me, most people do, because getting around Thailand, if you've got a little motorcycle or moped, it's great. You're free to go anywhere. And contrary to the scaremongering that goes on in the West, it's actually pretty safe. Like I rode in Thailand almost 4 years. I never actually had an actual accident. I had a couple of near misses. I think I slipped over once because I rode on like a slippery surface. I think I went onto the lobby of a hotel and it was kind of marble and like the tire just came from underneath me. But it wasn't a serious accident. I just kind of fell over. But I never actually had any proper accidents. Actually, my whole time in Asia, I only ever had one accident. And that accident, like a car came, I swerved, I ended up on the pavement, but I actually got up and walked away from that, thank God. I mean, I was wearing a helmet, which always do that. A lot of people get this false sense of security because they see the locals not doing it, and they think, yeah, who cares? Nobody wears helmets here. My helmet saved my life. My helmet had a massive gash down the front of it, and if that had not been my helmet, that would have been my face. So yeah, wear a helmet, for the love of God. But anyway, I'm digressing. So, cost of living, your rent shouldn't take more than a quarter of your salary. You can rent a motorcycle back when I was there for maybe a couple of thousand baht. Just to give context, at the moment, I believe the pound, I think it's something like £1 is around 40 baht. So if you take an average salary of around 35,000 baht, you're looking at around just under £800 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot here, but in Thailand, it's not bad. It's okay. So yeah, lower cost of living, you learn enough to, pay your rent, get a set of wheels. You can definitely entertain yourself. I wouldn't say you can, live like Andrew Tate and, totally, make it rain. No, but you can definitely live a decent life. So let me move on to the cons, the downsides of, teaching in Thailand. So we've talked about the good side, we've talked about the laid back pace. We've talked about, low cost of living, the good weather, the rest of it. So let's go into some cons, and there are a few downsides. One, there is a low cost of living, but it's not nearly as low as it used to be. And that 35,000 baht salary, I'll stutter a bit, it's been that for the last 15 to 20 years. like I first worked in Thailand in 2012. That's for like no, it's 12 years ago. I was getting 30,000 and 35,000 baht then. You know, like that was the range of salaries then. And sadly, it still is today. Like the salary has not gone up at all. Maybe in Bangkok it might be a little higher. It could be around 40. I've heard some talking about 50, but it's generally in a more prestigious school where you might need a lot more qualifications to get in. But, you know, the cost of living has gone up since then. Like when I was there, like I never worked in Bangkok. I chose to go to the provinces because one, it's a lot cheaper, and two, you know, it's just a lot more laid back. It's easy to get to work. It's an easier life. You can always come to Bangkok to visit, you know, but I've seen teachers in Bangkok, like whenever I've visited Bangkok, if you take like the metro, the SkyTrain, the bus, and you see foreigners on the bus, and you know they're teachers straight away. They're dressed in their shirt, their trousers, and all that, and they look dead. They're slumped over. They've had a long day, and then they've got to commute back to their little room or whatever they're renting, which is costing them way more than it would in the provinces. But they're not getting more of a salary really. You know, like I'd never teach in in Bangkok. But like, yeah, so I'm digressing again. So 35,000 baht was what I was getting 2012. People are still getting that today. But nowadays, example, an average Thai meal in a little Thai restaurant, and they're everywhere, you can't miss them. You get like fried rice, like khao pad gai, you know, chicken fried rice. When I was there, used to be around 30, 35 baht, creeping up to the 40 mark by the time I left Thailand, which was like 2018. Nowadays, I've heard it's around 60. Doesn't sound like a lot. It still only converts into about £1.50. But the salary hasn't gone up in 15 years. So it means that if I was to hypothetically go back and teach and get the same salary that I was getting 12 years ago, I'd be a hell of a lot poorer. That's like having your salary almost cut in half. So that's a big con in my eyes. That's why I probably wouldn't go and teach in Thailand anymore. Number two, if you plan to make ESL or teaching English as a career, you won't progress in Thailand. Like, it's good to get the experience. It's good if it's your first job and just to cut your teeth, so to speak. But if you've got no plan to go anywhere else, you won't progress in it. You'll be doing the same job on the same salary and just stagnating for years. There's no progression. Like for me, I did about a year and a half in Thailand in the beginning. Then I went and I looked for jobs elsewhere. I looked in the neighboring countries. You know, there are countries, even Vietnam, Myanmar, even Malaysia, they pay higher than Thailand. But in those countries, you actually need to know what you're doing, which is why Thailand is a good option to sort of get the experience, you know, to like a stepping stone. So you can get a bit of confidence. And then once you know what you're doing, leave, you know, go to somewhere else where you'll get paid better. You'll actually get treated better as well. You know, you'll get respected more, which I'm going to move on to that anyway. So that's another thing what I want to talk about. So another con in my eyes, foreigners, even though we get treated sort of nicely, we're not entirely respected, especially by our Thai colleagues. Sad to say, maybe people are going to curse me out and say, oh, that's not true. But I feel like, especially in Thai government schools, we're tolerated rather than appreciated. Like, it's like we're just put there just so that they can have the face to show that, yeah, we are foreign teachers, you know, these are native speakers, so to speak. But by our Thai colleagues, unless you either speak Thai, which I learned to speak Thai, and in a way, that was both good and bad. To be honest, you're mostly just tolerated, or unless you're very good at either brown nosing and kissing up, or you're very good at sort of just stroking people's ego. And believe me, Thais love to have their ego stroked because everything in Thailand is just based on face. It's about everybody trying to gain face, to look good. It's very superficial in that way. So that's one thing. And also, you won't really do any real teaching unless you're working in a prestigious school or like an international school or a language center, somewhere where people take it seriously. In a government school, it's not taken serious. Like most of the students, unless you've got like a high level set, they treat your class as like a play lesson. It's just a place where they can go mess around for an hour. It's not, they don't treat it as a proper subject. They'll come in, they'll be very nice, they'll go in and it's, oh, good morning, teacher, good afternoon, teacher, how are you today? That's what happens in all Thai classes. But once that's over, the class can just descend into absolute chaos. And unless you've got very good classroom management skills and a very harsh tone, which doesn't always work, you will not get control of that class. So be prepared that whatever you learn in your TEFL, your TESOL, your CELTA, it doesn't really apply there. It doesn't work. The only other thing, which could be both bad and good, is if you learn to speak Thai, which I did, it helps in a way because you can at least have some rapport with your students and understand what they're saying to you and vice versa, and you can at least get through to them in that way. But it can also come up and bite you in the rear end because once the students know that you speak Thai, they will never speak English to you. They won't even try because, oh, no problem, he speaks Thai. You've kind of, it's a double-edged sword. So, yeah, there's that. So that's a con. Another big con, in my eyes, is the visa process. It is so difficult. Like, you can get in the country, you can get visas on arrival, like 30 days, or you can apply for a tourist visa. You can get the employment visa, but you have to jump through so many hoops. Like, to be honest, the visa process for getting a work permit and staying in Thailand deserves a video by itself. To explain it here would take ages. But just, if you take my word for it for now, or do your own research, you'll realize that getting the work permit and everything, it's not straightforward. Like technically in Thailand, there are no work visas. There's something called a non-B visa, and then you have to go on another process to progress that. And then you have to apply for this and this and this. I personally, confession, I only ever held a work visa once, and it was pointless. It was absolutely pointless. It actually made me more vulnerable than by working on tourist visas, because at least on a tourist visa, if you get fired at any time, and believe me, that's another con, you can be arbitrarily fired like that. They can just sack you one day because they don't like your face anymore. And if you're on an employment or a work visa, the day they sack you, you've got 24 hours to leave the country. Quite literally, 24 hours, you've got to get out of the country. But if you're on a tourist visa, you can stay until your tourist visa expires. But the tourist visas are obviously a lot shorter than the working visa. But it does give you more freedom because you get quite a few more trips out the country as and when you please. And a lot of schools, even though they won't say this up front, a lot of schools will tolerate working on a tourist visa because it saves them the headache of getting you the work visa. But I don't see it as a positive. I mean, like I said, the visa process in Thailand, it's quite hard compared to neighboring countries. Actually, the easiest country for me to get a work visa was actually Myanmar. Like, the company handled everything from start to finish. I just had to give them my passport. They sorted it all out. Once it was done in a few days, gave me my passport back. I had a full resident permit. Like I was even, I even had access to government hospitals, all of it. So that was a difference. While in Thailand, it's a bit, everything feels very temporary. That's all I'm going to say. And coming on to one of my last points before I sign off, another con of working in Thailand, don't get too comfortable. Like, it's not going to be forever. Like, unless you marry a Thai, it's very temporary. And even the mentality of Thai people is, when are you leaving? They'll ask this up front. It's like, oh, how long will you be in Thailand? When are you planning to go back to your country? They don't expect you to stay long. They expect everyone to stay for a year or two and then just leave. That's the way it is. So Thailand is not a permanent solution. It's going to feel great at the time. You're going to feel, I could live here forever. You'll make a whole bunch of friends. But everybody leaves eventually. Unless, like I said, you manage to find a Thai partner. And you better be very selective on that. Because if you marry the wrong one, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. That's another whole can of worms you don't want to open. So, yeah, basically, to sum it up, teaching in Thailand can be a very rewarding experience. It can start a career if you want to get into it. It's a good place to start. But if you want to have a career in it, don't plan to stay in Thailand. Be in Thailand for a year max and start progressing, start looking outside, start looking at other countries. Have a plan. Or if you just want to do it to have a bit of a gap here or just go traveling, it's good as well, even though, to be honest, depending on where you are in Thailand, you might not do as much traveling as you think you're going to do. And most of the easy jobs to get are not going to be in the popular areas like Phuket, Pattaya, all that area. You're going to probably end up in a province somewhere, somewhere. I mean, if you're unlucky, you might end up in Isan, which is like the poor region, which can be nice in itself. Or you could end up in some province down in the south, which I personally actually enjoyed more. I like the south of Thailand better. Everyone has their preferences. But what I'm saying, Thailand's not forever. You will need to either figure out a way to go back home again once you're done, or progress to another country if that's what you want to continue doing. But have that in mind, because a lot of people, they get caught out. They think they get comfortable. They don't even save much money neither. They're living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have a backup plan. And that can also be quite a tricky situation. One last thing I want to touch on as well. Do not, and I repeat, do not overstay your visas, not even by a day. Like, I'm proud to say that in the years I lived there, I never overstayed once. I wanted to keep my record clean. A lot of people do, and if you overstay, I think it's less than 10 days, you can go to the airport as long as you don't get caught by an immigration officer on the way to the airport or walking around. You can go and you just pay the fine. I believe it's something like 500 baht or like £12 a day for every day you overstay. You pay at the airport, that's it, it's done. But if you overstay longer than that, not only will you have to pay a fine, but you may get banned for a certain period of time. That will go on your record. And, if you get caught outside on an expired visa and you've overstayed, that can also land you in a lot of hot water. Like, you will go to jail until you've managed to buy your flight, pay your fine and get out. They'll take you straight to immigration jail, and those places, they're actually, from what I've heard, they're actually worse than normal jail. Normal jail, where you've been convicted already, you've got rights, you've got phone call, you've got all that. Immigration jail, they literally just chuck you in a cell to rot, And that, you're not even sentenced. You don't even have a time frame or a sentence. You're basically there until you can buy your way out, which is very difficult when you're stuck in a cell with 50 people and allowed out maybe for half an hour a day just to make some necessary phone calls. So beware, really beware. I don't want to sort of scare anyone off. Like I said, if you've got it together, you've got a bit of money to set yourself up, and you do your research, you can live a nice life in Thailand for a bit. You can find a job, get to know the people, learn the language if you feel like as well. It can be good, but also go with open eyes. Do your research first and think to yourself, after this, what will you do next? Will you come back to your home country? If you will, then don't burn your bridges and have a plan to come back. Or if you want to stay out for a while, then look around at the other neighboring countries. You'd be surprised how many I don't know what to call them, expats or migrants. I guess, there's that whole thing that, if you're white, you're an expat. If you're another, then you're a migrant. I saw myself as just a migrant, to be honest. So basically, if you meet other migrants or expats, whatever you want to call them, a lot of them have not even visited their neighboring countries. They come to Thailand and that's it. That's all they know. The only time they ever go to a neighboring country is to renew a visa. And some of them are so lazy, they won't even go themselves. They'll pay like some agent to just take their passport for a bit of a journey and come back with a stamp. Because they don't want to miss out on, beer time. But, if you're there and you plan to stay out of England for a while or whatever country you're coming from, get to know your neighbouring countries and get to know them well, so that at least you've got other opportunities and you've got a way out as and when you need it. That I can't stress enough. To be honest, I know Thailand pretty well, like the back of my hand. I know Malaysia probably even better. And I also know Myanmar. It was like, I called Myanmar my home for nearly 2 years. So luckily, having those 3 countries in that triangle where I knew them very well gave me a lot. It gave me a lot of scope and a lot of opportunities, because if I didn't find something in one, I'd find it in another. So yeah, basically all I can say is, just keep your options open. If you're going to come back at the end of it to your home country, don't burn your bridges. If you're going to stay out, then have options. Don't just sort of, restrict yourself to one, because it may not always be there and it may not even serve you that well. So I'm going to cut it off here for now. And if you have any questions, leave a comment in the comments below and I will happily answer any questions you have. And thanks for watching. And by the way, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, because it helps the channel grow. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.